Welcome into A to Z Sports Prime Time, Monday night edition. Hope everybody's week got off to a great start. Lovely to have you guys here. So, wide receivers and the Titans, always a hot button issue. And with Colton Dowell, the 7th round pick, 228 overall to be exact, coming out of UT Martin, how big an impact, if any, can this player have on one of the worst, if not the worst, wide receiver rooms in football? Or at least, worst or unproven, depending on which way you want to evaluate the Titans wide receiver position at this point. But we'll talk about his weekend at rookie minicamp. We'll talk about what he has to do to make or miss the active roster. And then we will welcome Bert in for an in case you missed it moment. Got a lot of good stuff for you tonight and looking forward to getting into it with you. Need you guys to share this show around first and foremost. If you're hanging out on Twitter, please retweet the show in the bottom right-hand corner of your screen. If you're on Facebook Live like Michael Webb or Omar Walton, you can share now to public. That's in the bottom left-hand corner of your screen. YouTube or Twitch like Karen Davis or Derek R. You can like the video. You can subscribe to the channel if you haven't done so already. And we can get into this wide receiver discussion with you, your friends, and anybody who would join us throughout the course of the primetime broadcast. Kenneth Davidson says, got to grab somebody when they are released after training camp or trade for Allen. I don't know who Allen is. I assume you're talking about Keenan Allen. And waivers are possible, but you haven't seen a ton of names that would be worth your time where the waiver wire is concerned. So we can talk about this. Let's go ahead. And MB says, what wide receivers, Buck? Well, that's what we're here to address throughout the course of this evening. So let's go ahead and get this thing started. Welcome into A to Z Sports Prime Time from the Superbook Sports Studios. I'm your host, Buck Rising, and I am proud, as always, to be presented to you by True Math Fitness in the Gulch. Go to True Math Fitness, get your first workout free as a Middle Tennessee resident. The best workout in Middle Tennessee is TrueMathFitness.com. Superbook Sports, where you go to wager on all the action. Promo code A2Z, that's ATOZ, lets you wager on all your favorite major sports. And the Ashton Real Estate Group of RE/MAX Advantage. GaryAshton.com is where you go for your dream address without the stress. Get that intel edge you need to succeed with the Ashton team. So Colton Dowell, the 7th round wide receiver, the local product, right? Lebanon, Tennessee, played his high school football in Wilson County. All these different local connections. He grew up going to Titans training camp with his dad. He is a true blue, homegrown Titans fan, and now he's on the roster. Now, whether he ends up making the team or not is going to be a fascinating prospect because if you'll recall, this was kind of the case with Theo Jackson last year, the safety from the University of Tennessee. Played his high school football here locally, went to UT for college, was drafted here as, I believe, a 7th round pick or a 6th round pick as well last year, made it a couple of weeks into the season, and then ultimately was waived, got picked up by the Minnesota Vikings. So there's no guarantee that Colton Dowell as a 7th round wide receiver even makes the roster, right? But he's the only wide receiver that they drafted this year. Now, they also signed Chris Moore in free agency, who's been around for a couple of years at this point. He's going to be 30 years old in this season, if he's not 30 already. And for Titans fans who are looking around at the wide receiver room being like, really, this is what we've got? Well, it may not be exactly what this group looks like by the time we get to, the second week in September. But we are at a place with the Titans wide receiver group where it's fair to expect that this is probably what it's going to look like in some form or fashion. So we're going to get into this with your Two Rivers Ford take on Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, and Twitch. Which Titans wide receiver is under the most pressure to perform this year? Let's talk about it together on Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, and on Twitch. Which Titans wide receiver on the roster do you think is under the most pressure to perform? We will get to your responses. You'll hear from Mike Vrabel here in just a second, right after I remind you that your Two Rivers Ford take is made possible by Two Rivers Ford. Go to Two Rivers Ford in Mount Juliet. They're a locally owned and operated business for 40 years here in Middle Tennessee, doing their work with honesty and integrity. A non-commissioned sales staff, the best prices around, and quality American-made Ford vehicles. Two Rivers Ford in Mount Juliet or online at tworiversford.com. So as you look at the Titans wide receiver room, which of these players has the most to prove? We were talking about this on the radio show today. And initially, I came in with the position of, well, it's going to be really, really difficult for Colton Dowell to kind of thrive here under normal circumstances because of the place that he's just been drafted. He is a 7th-round wide receiver from a small school, UT Martin. He is somebody who is going to try his best to take advantage of his NFL dream, but he is also somebody who is, not a lock by any stretch of the imagination in a wide receiver room that is weak. But if he can show himself to be viable, both on offense and on special teams, then he can find his place here. But I thought initially that there was going to be pressure on Colton Dowell. I don't know if that's fair for me to say. I don't know if that's unfairly creating expectations for a 7th-round wide receiver, where 7th-round expectations for a wide receiver are little to none, right? If they make the roster even, it's gravy. So I think when we talk about, MB says, are we talking pressure to get open and catch the ball or getting downfield and impressing Vrabel with their blocking? Well, whatever it takes to make the roster, which, by the way, the latter is not insignificant as well as you well know. I think that when you look at the wide receiver situation that Dowell has just been dropped into specifically, he's going to face some pressure from Titans fans who are not necessarily upset with him, but are frustrated with him, but are frustrated by the situation that the Titans have created within their wide receiver room. Now, we've talked about this. The Titans think that they have a better wide receiver room than we're giving them credit for, with Burks, with Phillips, with Moore, now Dowell. You have Racey McMath, who's a very unproven commodity. All these different things that are coming to the forefront, and they're saying, well, trust us here. We think we've got some pretty good pieces in place to where there's not necessarily the urgency that you feel we need to have about the wide receiver position. Now, they could be very easily proven wrong about their theory on this, and we will find that out very quickly into the season. But Dowell's being dropped into this situation as the wide receiver on the roster, the one wide receiver draft pick in a year where we thought they had to take a wide receiver earlier rather than later. And I think ultimately it's going to be fascinating to see how it plays out. The most pressure by far and away is on Treylon Burks. But I think that because Awakened to the Eternal on YouTube says Dowell really isn't under any pressure as a rookie. And I would say that largely I agree with you, but I think because of fan frustration around the wide receivers, that should Dowell be put in a position to play, and should he make mistakes or run the wrong route or bobble a pass that goes off his hands into the arms of a defender and creates a turnover, right? If he has one of these moments, are people going to be discerning in real time and look at Colton Dowell and say, you know what, it's not your fault that you were put in this position. It's the Titans' fault for drafting you. Or are they going to hammer Colton Dowell out the gate because obviously he's the player in the position? Should he make it onto the field on offense? If he's in that role, is he not going to be the subject of a lot of scrutiny and a lot of pressure from Titans fans because he's the wide receiver? And okay, Rand, if you think this guy can contribute, why can't he do better than this? It's just kind of, it almost feels like a little bit of setting up for failure, right? And that's kind of the place that I'm in with Colton Dowell. You're going to hear from him here in just a second, right after I remind you that the Primetime Show is made possible by Superbook Sports. Download the Superbook app today, and they will match your first bet up to $250 with promo code ATOZ. That's A2Z in the Superbook Sports app, whether it's baseball, basketball, or hockey that you're wagering on this time of year. Football season right around the corner. No better place to get the best odds boosts and promotions than the Superbook app. So download it today. Go to superbook.com for terms and conditions. Gambling problem? Call the Tennessee Red Line, 1-800-889-9789. So Jonathan Ertl says, we're hoping for that next A.J. Brown, which I think Burks can be. No, let me stop you right there. Hoping for the next A.J. Brown is setting these players up for failure. You don't have A.J. Brown anymore. A.J. Brown no longer plays for the Tennessee Titans. It took you 25 years to find an A.J. Brown. Derek Mason was the closest thing that you had, and they're not the same kind of player. A.J. is by leaps and bounds a more physically talented, athletically superior player than Derek Mason was, even as Derek Mason was a hugely productive NFL player I think Derek was in the league for 12 years, if I remember correctly, with the Titans, the Ravens. I know he had a cup of coffee with the Texans and the Jets as well at the end of his career. But hoping for that next A.J. Brown is a failed proposition right out the gate. Because like I said, you didn't have an A.J. Brown before. When you got one, he was only here for a couple of years. And to be pining for your next one is a fool's errand because you think about how long it took you to find the one. And now you're in a situation where you're trying to hoist those expectations onto the wide receivers that are currently here. And it's creating unrealistic expectations because there's only so many players like that out there in the ecosystem of the NFL. Now, Treylon Burks is the player who is facing the most pressure, I think, in 2023 because he has those expectations. Ertl, is speaking to exactly that. We're hoping for the next A.J. Brown, which is, of course, a ludicrous thing, even as I understand that feeling, that emotion, because, of course, you want that back. And I understand what he's saying. I think he's trying to say a number one wide receiver versus being like A.J. And yes, I do take your point. But again, that phrasing matters, right? People are going to articulate it more like Jonathan just did as looking for the next A.J. Brown as opposed to looking for the number one wide receiver because A.J. Brown was most recently that. Now, the further we get away from A.J. being here, obviously those things will start to fade. But it's still a pretty fresh wound where we're just a little over a year removed from that transaction coming down. But I do think that Dowell is going to be looked at by Titans fans as, okay, this is somebody who should make the roster because he's the only wide receiver that they drafted this year. And while I don't think that's a lock, I think that he is in the right mindset to approach this thing in a way that will provide him the most opportunities to contribute to this football team at some point down the line.
My body was moving faster than my mind. I had a lot of adrenaline going, and I'd be lying if I said that was the first time I've ever done that, and I'm sure it's not going to be the last time. But it's a great thing that I can look at and know that I'm not where I need to be at yet, and just I can keep getting better. Looking at doing things like that, I can just keep getting better.
What did Coach say?
Coach Vrabel, he just kind of looked at me and he just moved on because he knows it happens. I'm a rookie, so it is what it is.
Colton, what is your relationship with?
So that's Colton Dowell, the new Titans wide receiver. He's got size. He's got good size. He's not like a burner by any stretch of the imagination, but I think they like the athletic ability that he might bring in this particular situation. And there will be opportunity because, as we said, it's one of the weakest wide receiver rooms in the National Football League at this point. Let's see. Fans 4 years from now, would you want AJ back? I mean, it's sure. I'm sure that there is a degree of that Titans fans experience in their day-to-day. But at this point, I think that just, you're better off letting AJ Brown walk out of your life. Well, I mean, you didn't let him walk out of your life. You sent him away, which is even worse. But I think at this point, it is, it's just wasting time to be thinking about AJ. Stephen King says, we want Frank to be a wide receiver. I assume you're talking about Francis, young Francis, who's currently hovering next to me. That's who I'm petting right now, as a matter of fact. She's very upset because I have not yet provided her with dinner. So running routes at this point in time is not going to be what Francis's MO is. And I would pick her up, but I think that would disrupt the show. In fact, we might just do that, even though she hates being held and is also hungry at this point. So this is a failed proposition all around. But I would say to you that if this does not look like wide receiver one in the NFL, then I don't know what does. She's the sweetest girl in the whole wide world, and she's not happy about being on camera. She just wants her food. This is my version of Garfield. Love you, Frank. Okay. We will get back to the wide receiver discussion here on A to Z Sports Prime Time. Dylan Cole says that cat is a lineman. Yes, she is. She's like her dad. She is husky, and that's okay. But we continue to work on that together. In my efforts to lose a bunch of weight this offseason or this past season, we were able to accomplish that goal. We will effort that with Frank as well. Corey D. Jackson says, can she get off press coverage? Listen, you'd have to double team her. She is a force to be reckoned with, and certainly you're going to have to disrupt her at the line of scrimmage, because if she gets going, she is a force. Anyway, where this ultimately stacks up, and we'll hear from Mike Vrabel on this here in just a second. But I think that for Colton Dowell, he is in a pretty unique position. Now, they signed a handful of somebody just said another Simmons in the works. Yeah, that's right. She's for sure a two-gapper. You're going to have to, she's on an inside shade of the guard and tackle there at that point. You are going to need to, you're going to make sure you need to know where Frank is at any point on the field, because she is the definition of a disruptor. But enough about Francis. We're here to talk wide receivers, and the Titans do have a couple of undrafted guys who I think can push Colton Dowell and NWI, and potentially Chris Moore, who's on not a long-term deal by any stretch of the imagination. We will discuss at length together right after I ask you the question, what does Colton Dowell need to do, or where do you see Colton Dowell's place on the roster? Do you even envision him making the team this year? We'll talk about it together right after I remind you that the Primetime Show is presented by our friends at the Ashton Real Estate Group of RE/MAX Advantage. Go to GaryAshton.com, get your dream address without the stress and the intel edge you need to succeed. They will put you in position with the best homes and the best information in Middle Tennessee, because they are the official real estate agent of the Nashville Predators, the official real estate agent of A to Z Sports Prime Time. Nobody does it better and has more for you than GaryAshton.com. So Bert has done me the courtesy of providing me the undrafted rookies and tryout players who were signed today officially. They include Kearis Jackson, the wide receiver from Georgia. But I understand what you tried to do there, Bert, and I appreciate your effort, but I can suss my way through that at this point. So there is some competition outside of what they have currently either drafted or signed at this point. Kenston Farmer says Colton will be legit. Imagine NWI with high-end athleticism. Well, I mean, it's not that he's unathletic, but by any stretch of the imagination, but like high-end athleticism, if he was a high-end athlete, then he would have been drafted earlier than the 7th round. He was, I think, somewhere in the mid-20s as far as like the number of wide receivers taken before him. I think it was somewhere between 22 and 25 wide receivers were taken before Colton Dowell. So basically, there is not a distinction between NWI and Colton Dowell at this stage, because they're basically coming in at the same point. It's basically the same pedigree. The only difference is, how many picks are there in the NFL draft? 200 and I think it's like 239 or something like that. Perhaps Bert can find me the number, or how many picks there were in this year's NFL draft. But like NWI as an undrafted rookie free agent is not, by any stretch of the imagination, an appreciably worse player than the player who was selected at 228. So if anything, NWI has a clear and obvious edge because he's been working as an NFL wide receiver for now going into year 4, 256, right? So if Dowell was taken at 228 and there was only, there was something like 22 or 23 wide receivers taken before him, are there really that many worse wide receivers, or is 228 that much appreciably better than a wide receiver who would have been 257 out of a draft that had 256 picks? You know what I'm saying? Like, the talent disparity is not what you're projecting it to be. Now, I understand why you might have that in your head, because there is something to being a draft pick versus being an undrafted guy. But NWI definitely has an edge over somebody like Colton Dowell because he's a veteran wide receiver. He's made it this far. He's made it further than the average NFL career, as a matter of fact. By any measure, NWI is a smashing success, even as many of you despise his presence on the roster because of what he represents about your wide receiver core. So no, I don't imagine NWI with high-end athleticism. I imagine NWI. I mean, they're built physically very much like each other. And could Colton Dowell push NWI for a roster spot? He's only on a 1 year, like $1.75 million. It may not even be that much. It's a 1 year deal, so it's far from any kind of a lock at this stage. But I think that the Andre Beeman says the fact that there is a discussion about how much impact a 7th round wide receiver will have is sad in itself, and I don't disagree with you at this point. But this is a team that likes to find value at the wide receiver position. And, based on how this year has gone, it doesn't look like that's an MO that's changing just because John Robinson's no longer the general manager. So I think that, where do I envision him? If he makes the roster, he's a special teams player first and foremost. And then if he earns his opportunities on special teams to play on offense, then perhaps he'll make a contribution. But if he makes the roster, it'll be because of special teams. And if he doesn't make the roster, perhaps they can sneak him through on the practice squad. But, there's not an appreciable difference between what Colton Dowell is coming out of UT Martin and what NWI was coming out of Indiana as an undrafted rookie free agent. All right, let us welcome producer Bert into the proceedings with In Case You Missed It. I know he has some interesting subject matter prepared as always. Before we do that, of course, we will remind you that the Primetime Show is made possible by TrueMav Fitness in the Gulch. Download the MindBody app and sign up for your first class at TrueMav Fitness today. It is so great, and you can try your first class as a Middle Tennessee resident for free when you sign up at TrueMavFitness.com. They have the best workouts imaginable. They have the best coaching staff for you to work with as you look to improve your fitness goals. Go to TrueMavFitness.com to sign up for your first workout free, or check out all of their great options from personal training to their open gym membership options for you available at TrueMavFitness.com. All right, Bert, what have you got for us this week?
What's going on, Buck? Now, I know you're not a doctor, but if I was going to ask you, how the hell would I get rid of some hiccups? What are some remedies you would tell me?
My proven or my most successful hiccup cure.
Would that
reciting
work?
The alphabet backwards. No, you do not intimidate me. You
No, I thought the shock would do it. So you would say scaring somebody. I've heard people say stand upside down or drink water. You like to say the alphabet backwards. Well, Bo Jackson's had hiccups for over a year, and he cannot get rid of this. So much so that he said he's tried everything we listed, and including sniffing a porcupine's ass. Now, I've never heard that, but if I had him for a year, I reckon I would be down to try something like that. So Bo Jackson's had hiccups, and he's tired of it.
Warning for this one might be a little disturbing to listen to. Sports great Bo Jackson has been in a battle for the last year trying to cure never-ending hiccups. Yes, the 60-year-old revealed all the remedies he's tried so far, including one that sounds a little too scary to try.
I have done everything. Scare me, drink water upside down, smell like of a porcupine. It doesn't work.
There's no way that was a medical recommendation. After the porcupine failed, Jackson revealed he's now getting a medical procedure done this week to finally put an end to the hiccups. Now, who told him to smell a porcupine's butt?
I don't know, but that would be agonizing. I mean, I'm sure at that point you're just desperate for anything.
That is true. I would try anything,
whatever.
But I feel like that was a friend playing a prank on him. That's terrible.
I mean, that's some brutal stuff. Like, that sounds like something you would do to me. Like if I was to come to Bert and say I have never-ending hiccups that's been going on for 6 months. Surely this man has some kind of backwoods North Carolina remedy that would be able to resolve my hiccup issues. And I feel like Bert in jest would look at Lucas and say, "Watch this," and tell me to go sniff a porcupine's ass.
Well, you wouldn't do it.
Hell no.
You wouldn't listen to me. See, I reckon Bo probably tried it. It would not surprise me if Bo went out there and sniffed one. If I had it for a year, dude, no way. I would give up. I would give up. I don't know what I'd do.
Well, and when I get the hiccups, I don't know, I don't know about people in the chat or you, Bert, but like when I get the hiccups, like my hiccups legitimately hurt. Like they don't feel good. It's not just like an inconvenient reaction.
Where do your hiccups be coming from? You mean do you make like a terrible noise when you do
Yeah,
it?
well, I mean,
I've never had a hiccup hurt.
it's very sharp. It's kind of like how sharply Lucas burps back there in the production studio. Like it sounds like something is emerging from my chest.
Well, I feel bad for you. Hopefully, you don't have them for a year. Bo Jackson's going to have a medical procedure. I don't know what the hell you would do to get rid of hiccups, but hopefully, Bo knows relief after after this weekend.
in more ways than one. Hopefully, he didn't get any porcupine quills in his nose. See, Bobby Carter has painful hiccups, as does Ryan Fields. From time to time, esophagus pain. Yes, esophagus pain is what I'm experiencing. It probably has something to do with, a combination of hiccups and acid reflux and all kinds of other shit that I've done bad to my body over the course of almost 30 years. But I think that, I would take the esophagus pain rather than sniff a porcupine's ass just the once. I think that at this point is the best thing that I think that's about as bad as it gets.
You're a scared and weak-throated man, Buck.
That's correct. That is
I'll
correct.
See you later.
That's Bert, in case you missed it from this past week. That's going to do it for us tonight. Thank you for hanging out. You can get more of the legend Robert Walsh tomorrow on the radio show from 10 to 1. Titans veterans did report to the practice facility today. So we will have press conference availability for you with the vets. We'll run that at noon tomorrow on 104.5 The Zone. And we'll keep you updated with the latest on when Will Levis might join the radio show. I have some promising leads to that effect. Major Key says, first, when are we getting a producer Reed reunion? So Reed called the radio show unexpectedly the other day. He what's the word that I'm looking for? Not crank called me, but he did tell me that it was Reed, and I've been a terrible friend. Producer Reed has a new job. I meant to take him out to dinner to celebrate it. That was months ago, and I still haven't done it yet. That is something that I need to work on. And Major Keys is asking about my contract discussions. Well, I am in a contract year. I have not to publicly, it's like Rand Carthon. We don't publicly negotiate. But you have several more months of me under contract, so I would not get any kind of I wouldn't worry about anything happening certainly in the immediate. We have plenty of time together, and I know that when the appropriate time comes, that on the radio side of things, and certainly with A to Z, those will be productive and healthy discussions whenever they decide that is something that they want to start talking about. But we got plenty of time before we get there. Stephen King says, Buck's leaving us to join Bussing with the Boys. No, they keep trying to hire me, and I can't keep telling them that they can't afford me. So we will we will keep the boys at bay in the meantime. Buck looks tired, says Alex M. That's because I always look tired. I'm basically just resigned to looking tired for the rest of my life now. If there's a day that I look fresh, refreshed, and full of life again, it'll mean either I've quit this job or I don't know, or I've had a nice day at the spa, which I'm probably due for. I might keep that up. My guy went from being the ghost of Andrew Luck to being one of the real ones, says Dog versus Face. Well, listen, if I can't escape the Luck comparisons, then I got to bust my ass in the meantime. So have a great rest of your night. Radio show from 10 to 1 with Lucas, Bert, and myself tomorrow. And if I don't catch you there, I will see you tomorrow night on A to Z Sports Prime Time. But don't forget that the live show at the install at the Hutton Hotel in downtown Nashville is coming up this Saturday. We are going for a sellout. I have committed. If you guys collectively purchase 50 tickets and make this thing a sellout by the time we get to Saturday, Bert and I are going to do the Will Levis. I'm going to eat a banana, peel and all, on the stage for all to see. And Bert is going to drink a cup of coffee with some mayonnaise in it. We have sold so many tickets. I can't wait to hang out with those of you who have purchased tickets already. we are going to be giving some away on the radio show this week. So make sure you're listening. If you are, if $25 is a little too rich for your blood, and that's okay. I completely understand, where everybody's at in terms of finances at this point. So if $25 is too rich for your blood, make sure you're listening to the radio show, and we'll tell you how you can win a couple of pairs of tickets to the install this week. But if you're feeling like $25 is worth your time, the install with Greg Cosell, the live show coming up this Saturday, May the 20th at the Analog in the Hutton Hotel. Bert appears to have deleted my video that is promoting the install, so I will put it back in there together, and that is how we will end the show. I was scrambling around looking for it, and to my dismay, my producer has betrayed me in my efforts to try and sell tickets here. So shame on him, but not shame on you guys, because I know you're going to go to 1045thezone.com and get your tickets today. If you're a fan of the Tennessee Titans, the Install Live Show with Greg Cosell of NFL Films coming up Saturday, May the 20th at the Hutton Hotel. Get your tickets right now at 1045thezone.com to hear the best breakdown of Will Levis.
Really, really excited and thankful for the opportunity.
And the rest of the Titans draft.